Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Holders Podcast, and today I'm joined with Charles Dumbrille. He's the Chief Risk Officer of In D Tel International, and he's also the President of the Mining Security Working Group. Charles, how are you doing today?
Hey, great to be here, Kyle. Doing well, thanks.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me today, Charles. The very first question I like asking my guests is what they were doing when they were my age. So I'm 25. What were you doing from 20 to 25 years old?
At that time, I had left working with the Department of Foreign Affairs in Washington, D.C. at the Canadian Embassy. It was at the beginning of the Iraq War, and Afghan War was starting up as well. There was a lot of pressure at the time for Canada to get involved in the Iraq War when we were already quite involved in Afghanistan. There was a lot of interesting discussions going on. The 108th Congress was just voted in Washington at Capitol Hill, and so there was working with informing American politicians and Americans, businesses on trade with Canada, where they were getting a lot of their energy, a lot of different resources at the time, and a lot of the politics that involved the US's major trading partner, Canada. At that time, I had come back to Canada, and then I went back down to the US, was working in Atlanta at CNN, where I was working at the international news desk,
Okay,
when it used to be the news desk was behind the anchor. So you could see all the computers and
right.
everyone working and the editors working there. I was supporting the senior Arab editor at the time, focusing on Middle East news and seeing what other Middle East news agencies were reporting on, other stories that were going on there, analyzing it and being able to pass it on. That would be then reported on CNN, sometimes domestic, but a lot of it also CNN International, and that was in Atlanta. And then after that, I did some work with Jimmy Carter's NGO, the Carter Center, doing conflict negotiations, where we were looking at peace agreements in Nepal, where Maoist rebels were on their way to Kathmandu with a coup there that was taking
Well,
place.
what was that job though? Like you weren't an editor, were you?
No,
What
no,
was
it
the
was
company you
more
were
of a
with?
researcher. It started out with internships and
Oh,
then some contract work as well with the Canadian government. And then due to visa restrictions and being entry level at the time, I had to come back to Canada for to work with some defense think tanks and did some writing there, and then went on to grad school after that.
wow. Very cool. Very cool background. Seems adventurous for a young guy. So what are you doing now? What is in detail and what is your day-to-day job now?
In D Tel is a company I started about 10 years ago. It is started from my interest in conflict, international security. My background is been always interested in helping supporting Canadian companies that are working overseas, helping understand the above ground risks, the political risks, the security situations for where they are operating. So after doing a few stints in NGOs and media and government, I realized the private sector was the right fit for me after grad school, where I studied in King's College London at the War Studies department there, and came back to Canada knowing I wanted to be here, but focusing on what's going on overseas. I grew up around natural resources in my family, sort of got fortunate enough to have a dinner table education with my family being involved in natural resources. I never got into working in that sector directly, but certainly grew up with dinner conversations with my grandparents that were involved. Started with my great grandfather and his brother. My grandmother was very much involved in it. My mother was very much involved in it.
Hmm.
There were mining rock samples all around my grandparents' home. The hearth has samples from different mine sites all around, and just understanding some of these projects that were going on from up in the Arctic to northern BC to out in the Maritimes. But after studying conflicts, being interested in what's going on around the world, and also being influenced by Canadian businesses that are working overseas in natural resource sector, I sort of combine the two, wanting to support them, providing security assessments, due diligence, and security support, travel risk management now, and be able to provide that support that they weren't able to get themselves elsewhere.
Let's get into these above ground risks. What are the major above ground risks? Because it's already, you hear mining's a risky business, and yeah, it's risky. You're drilling holes into the ground that cost a lot of money. But what are the above ground risks in these foreign countries that you're talking about?
There is numerous ones, from the macro to down to the local level. A lot of the concerns are not paid attention to because a lot of what's going on, they're just, why would they bother me? I'm digging a hole in the ground. But when you come in, you're interrupting a neighborhood, a culture that has maybe not had a lot of mining in the area before, or maybe it has and has had a rough past. So it's being able to support them, doing that due diligence, understanding what's going on. So different cases are everything from a mining development wants to come into a jurisdiction, a neighborhood, a community, where they're not familiar with mining. They've heard stories of it. They don't have that support structure for bringing in a business that could bring in a lot of jobs, that could, which is a great thing, but also would also attract a lot of other people to the region from major urban centers that don't have that support.
Right.
So it's understanding those situations. You can have examples of everything from the mine company saying, well, let's be able to bring in a road and have the locals be able to take their products that they're working in, most likely agriculture, and excuse me, be able to trade those and sell those in the major cities. But maybe they don't want that development, unfortunately, because they don't want the government involved there. There may be everything from illicit trade going on in the neighboring community, or there may be agriculture or farmer that doesn't want the government coming in and regulating their operations as much. So you can have these, you can have this resistance. There's also dealing with political support. Presidents will change and policies will change, and to get support of maybe indigenous communities that are not supportive of the development of mining in those areas. You can also have organized crime cartels that are in those areas that are taking advantage of the opportunity of underdevelopment, and have really stepped in some cases to support those communities where the government has not been able to. And so they are sort of that government for that community. And now you're having to sort out, how do we work with, how do we manage our project where there's this great resource below ground, but we're not able to move forward because it's controlled by organized crime.
So these illegal miners, they're providing jobs to their communities. And I heard, I think it was, we were talking before that because Canada has such a large resource industry and so many resource companies, that some of these countries don't like us Canadians coming there, right? They'd rather, like, it's not good to call yourself a Canadian in some countries because of this. Isn't that the case? So do they have problems with us foreign investors coming in and pulling the resources from the ground?
Canada has a strong reputation in some countries, but in others, certain communities, they don't. So it's disappointing from failed opportunities where mining company has come in and there's been resistance, and that maybe they haven't had the proper support or the proper training with, if they have security detail coming in, where the community has come in and said, no, we don't want to have this come in, but this project come in. But then local workers may say, well, I'm losing an opportunity, my livelihood, and they will take advantage themselves, or security themselves will try to take advantage of the situation. So they don't have the proper training, aren't following proper international standards towards human rights and security to be able to act in a way that will be able to support in a humane way of moving these projects forward and helping the communities in these regions.
Are these those artisanal miners?
So with the illegal mining, we've got a mix of artisanal and illegal mining, depending on the local laws and what's going on in these areas. Commonly, for $10, for about the size of your thumb, you can purchase mercury, which is quite devastating if used in the process of mining, where people are coming in looking for opportunities. They may be from that region, and they feel entitled to that resource that others have been aware of for decades, for generations, to new discoveries because of exploration teams going in. And so that attraction has also brought in the illegal miners and can be quite devastating on the environment. But also some laws, depending on the country and the jurisdiction, do allow this artisanal style mining, where it's primitive equipment and they're doing it by pick and shovel rather than these major operations. But again, it depends if they are trained in doing it properly and safely, and going about that. How do you maintain your mining company's property rights, but at the same time you can have illegal miners coming in and taking that resource from the mining company that has legally purchased that area.
Oh, so do those illegal miners, like, do they threaten mining executives and the miners, like, physically? Like, do they try and scare them?
There is concerns. Yeah, absolutely. Concerns with illegal miners at mine sites when security workers are protecting the rights of the mining company where they have purchased and staked out that area, but have also have people coming in and mining that on their property. So you have security that is coming in and can be everything from fighting back with firearms themselves, getting harmed, to damaging the area, the resources in that area, natural resources like the water resources in those areas. So illegal mining is a huge issue. For example, right now, the latest examples I've seen are in the Amazon basin. There is enough devastation from illegal mining that is about the size of Oregon.
Wow. So a lot of this illegal mining is organized crime, but I'm wondering about the artisanal miner that's exposing themselves to mercury, and they're putting their own. I'm sure they know that's not good for them, but it's a way to make money and a living. Are they usually the ones getting employed by the Canadian mines, and do they see it as a benefit to the community, or would they rather stick with their own artisanal mine and not work for a Canadian company?
No, absolutely. There are safer ways of mining artisanally, and there are different processes. There are different programs out there, different small companies that support and create a safe and promote a safe operation of these mines that are able to bring their product to market, sell it legally, and be able to trace it that way. But again, there are these concerns of other ones where these programs are not introduced, or they are not working as well as they should be, and it causes a black market and can cause where it's traded through middlemen, and for something like a precious metal that can be carried away easily, it can be a big concern because then it's sold on the black market.
So this black market for gold, if you're an investor and you don't want to be supporting the black market for gold, are Canadian mining companies a safe bet? Like, is there any news of mining companies taking illegal gold and claiming it as their own, pulled from the ground?
There are. I am not familiar with a lot of them that are out there, but there's always, I'm afraid, bad actors that are taking advantage of opportunities, finding resources, not reporting them properly. But if you're listed, there's more regulations here in Canada to be able to trace where these are coming from, and there's also new technology which is coming in as well, which is really interesting to see if that gets adopted over the next few years, hopefully, to be able to, without it slowing down the development, but also being able to do it properly in a safe manner.
Yeah, like any resource, food, like fish, or like it's very hard to figure out the supply chain. So it's not just a mining issue, but I was just wondering if there were some bad actors in our resource, our stock exchange.
No, maybe not as much on the Canadian markets, but you can see it in other regions where they're selling it in other, so precious metals being shipped off, stories being reported of it being melted down into bars and then just put into suitcases and sent off to other parts of the world, whether it's Dubai or China or elsewhere.
Hmm. Is there risk of kidnapping for, like, these guys have deep pockets, these are mining executives. Does organized crime target these people at all? Like I remember we talked about hijacking. It was Alamos Gold. They get their shipment hijacked before from Intel?
They've had an incident of robbery last, so in spring Q2 of 2020, where a shipment was picked up by plane, precious metal, being able to fly it out. Wasn't an ore that some ores are having to be put on trains out to ports to be shipped off, but with precious metals like gold, you can just put it on a flats and be able to fly it out, and helps ease on that supply chain security. So there was this incident in, I believe, May, around a year ago, where they subdued, assailants came in, subdued the security, and a second plane came in. They loaded up the plane. Within 10 minutes, the theft was gone. It was covered by insurance, but at the same time, that raises insurance rates for other mining companies in those areas. But it was at the point of finding out with the pandemic, the concerns. It was a skeleton crew at the time. They didn't know how bad this was going to get, at what rate it was going to, the pandemic was going to be climbing, and so they probably felt they needed to get this resource out and in a safe spot. But it also seemed to get picked up by local cartels or organized crime syndicates that were able to take advantage of this in a very professional job.
Wow. So a skeleton crew due to COVID. Is there any other stories, or how has the landscape changed in the mining industry from COVID in general? Is there more risks involved? Is there less risks? Or
Well, the landscape has changed quite a bit for Latin America. Organized crime syndicates were relying on the drug trade. With the borders being closed, it's harder for them to transport their shipments. So they're looking for alternative revenue streams. They're going back to their traditional ways of kidnap, ransom, extortion, and wanting to control those supply chains when borders do open up again after the pandemic. So a lot of regions that were tended to be quiet before the pandemic have changed. So that is a concern for exploration teams. That's a concern for investors that are wanting to go back to these original spots that they were before the pandemic. And they may notice a difference, that it is that things have changed quite a bit since they were last there. You're getting a lot of organized crime that are fighting against each other, which causes a lot more violence. But also, if things are quiet, it could be a sign that there's more control. And if there's more control from one organized crime syndicate to another, then they're going to be flexing muscle in those regions and looking for these revenue streams that they're missing out. So they may be doing more extortion practices and targeting, whether it's those geologists that are returning to site or those mining companies that are able to still operate where they are. So, and you can be hiring a security manager or someone on site, having them vetted, going through lie detector tests, the whole bit.
Right.
But over the years, even pandemic or not, they get pressure, they get extorted by cartel, and they start paying them off. And you see incidences like that all the time. So it's helping support companies that way too.
Plomo or plata, isn't that the letter? What is that saying? Plomo or plata. So at In Detail, you guys actually, you're also a security, like you outsource security too. You actually, people could pay In Detail as security, where they would help
So we're
transport.
providing a lot of, we don't do a lot of the physical security ourselves. We're dealing more with the risk management side, the due diligence, providing actionable intelligence, understanding what's going on in those regions, and being able to the security side. It's not providing, we don't do security guard business, but we do help on that travel risk management side of providing protective travel for whether it's executives going to sites or needing that daily transportation if they are in a hostile area where there is a lot of crime and they could be targeted. They may have an apartment there. They may be used to living there, operating there for, I've heard many times, we've been there 25 years, have good relationships with the mayor, and we're good. But at the same time, those that take that time to invest and protect their employees and that importance of duty of care we provide a service to help protect them going from A to B, whether it's landing at the airport where they may be targeted, may be able to see them coming in that way to their local apartment, to the site of where the project is.
And is it also like a consulting service where, like, let's say a gold mine sees an exploration company in a region they haven't mined before, but they like the drill results? Would they go to you or someone in your field and say, hey, what do you think of this area? Like, we're not familiar with this country, but we know you're familiar with more foreign countries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So it's providing that due diligence, that actionable intelligence of being able to give them an understanding of what is going on politically, socioeconomically, legally in that area, and understanding how maybe crime groups are operating in those areas, what challenges you will have in those regions, getting an understanding of the communities, the history in those areas that are maybe in opposition. They may be organizing referendums to not allow any major mining, to getting an understanding on those. So it's not only pointing out the risks, but pointing out opportunities too. So it's being able to and help mitigate those risks too.
Very cool. A little off topic here, but why is there so many Canadian resource companies? Like, there's a lot of Canadian companies where there's American operations, but or not even American operations. They're located in America. They're a Canadian company, but they're operating in foreign countries. Why is there so many?
Natural resources in general, mining particularly, is a very large industry in Canada. It used to be as high as 75% of mining companies were listed on the Toronto Exchange. It's now lower, probably close to 60%, as other companies are getting listed in other regions where they're establishing their own markets. But it's traditionally because of the resources, the capital that we have, the knowledge from starting out at the turn of the 20th century with mining here, big silver boom near cobalt around 1905, and then also natural resources here in BC. You've also got tax breaks available to mining companies. You can have so there's legal benefits, tax benefits on that side as well. It's the resources are right here in our backyard from the expertise and knowledge of the community. We tend to be more Latin American focused, following the time zones, it seems. There's more capital also in London, and more African countries seem to be listed on the on the London exchange, but that doesn't mean that there's no Canadian operations. There certainly is. You could also say that Canadian investors are more familiar with Latin American opportunities than they are of African.
Interesting. And is there any risks within Canada? Like Canada within the borders seems pretty okay, right? Like a long relationship with. Is there much risk or concerns within the borders for mining?
For operations here, there are concerns, certainly. I mean, it's not, you don't have to be in the developing countries with higher crime rate and lower quality of life, and with less development, to have these risks. You can have concerns of theft of equipment on the mine site. You can have opposition. You can have strong environmental groups that oppose any development in these regions. You can have indigenous issues and issues of rights of the land and who controls it, who owns it, and getting those sorted out. There are a lot of remote areas as well. They don't have the energy supply or the supply chain to get to some of these remote areas too. So certainly are those risks too.
Okay. Well, we chatted a month ago or so to book this interview, and you showed me you had a little sample from an infamous mine. Do you care to explain to our listeners out there about
it's a Briec sample from Briec site in 80. Let's see, when was that? 89. Correct me if I'm wrong. Of a site in
Indonesia,
down in southeast, Indonesia. That before the 43-101, so regulation that came in that where geologists had to keep updating their results of the drill tests that they were finding. I picked this up at PDAC, their conference a couple of years ago, and connected with the geologist. He was at a site nearby, didn't believe the deposit was as big as the promoters were saying that it was. And he asked one of his colleagues to go over for a visit, and they had to go over for another reason, and they said, bring back 5 kilo bag a sample if you can. And the guy came back with a much larger one and was able to share some of these. So excuse me, but the site is depicted in the movie Gold with Matthew McConaughey, I believe, and the story's there where the site was a dud. There was nothing there, and the government had got involved. One of the geologists fell out of a helicopter. Fondly remember reading this on the kitchen counter when the newspaper arrived that day, and hearing that story, and it was an introduction of the risks of mining and where they were taking, looking at these opportunities, but also seeing where this mine had flopped, and the stock price had gone up and then shot right back down. But it's a great story to learn more about. And the company was called Briec, based out of Calgary.
Yeah, so after Briec, and it was called salting, what they did there, right? They were salting the cores.
Yes, yeah.
And with that, the 43-101s were put in place, but is there still risks involved with, like, do those is there still risks in the industry that people have to be concerned about investing in these exploration plays still? Is there still salting going on, or
No, because the 43-101 has been able to stop that. It's that balance of regulation, but not too much regulation to allow the market to be able to move forward, to not scare away investors, but also make investors feel comfortable enough with the gamble that they're making. Everyone should be doing their own due diligence and hiring out proper due diligence if they're getting into some of these bigger projects that because there's so much information out there, knowing what is true or not, or the analysis is if it is true or not as well. You can get a lot of this information. I look at it as when you're sick, you go to WebMD,
right?
but there's also professionals out there. They're called doctors to be able to help diagnose and get you better when you can be misdiagnosed yourself from doing your own search if you are sick online. So it's also best to get professionals involved in making sure that the analysis is best that you can find out there, that the reports are accurate, and be able to move confidently forward with your investments.
So you do the due diligence for possible investments for these mining companies, but does the Canadian government do due diligence on these foreign projects? Is there any governmental body that actually ensures Canadians are following foreign rules and regulations?
There is support on that side, but it's also depending on the company size and what they can do as a government to support these regions, support these companies. So there is some support, but maybe not as much as other countries are providing, other governments that provide that are more state involvement in the projects, certainly. So it's relying on the private sector and their networks to be able to help support investors.
Okay, yeah, because ESG, environmental, social, and governance, is becoming more and more important
Yes,
um, in investing. So I was just
a
wondering,
growing industry and lots of
yeah.
ESG experts out there that have all of a sudden come out of nowhere. So it's important also to know who you're working with on that ESG side if you're getting their support. ESG should be owned by the company, not by the expert coming in. So yeah, it's
What do you mean
word
by
of
that?
caution,
What do you mean by that? Owned by the company,
meaning
not?
that it is their program, it is their that they control their ESG program themselves. It's not these ESG specialists that are coming into that maybe don't have all um, the knowledge and expertise and support that they need for these. I'm not an ESG expert. I focus
Mhm.
solely on the security and due diligence side of that. But it is a growing industry where you're getting lots of people saying they are ESG experts.
Which I think it should. Like,
Absolutely, there
what?
is that need for this.
Yeah, because here in Canada, it's so easy to detach yourself from your investments, and you can just see that the bottom line's profit, and the social and human rights issues behind that is not there's no financial incentive, right? It's more about being a good human being in a good company.
Absolutely, it's as an investor, I hope you have a soul and it's not just pure profits, and knowing that your investment does make an impact, hopefully in the positive, in the right direction to help these communities and what they want, and moving projects forward and creating opportunities for the company and for the communities involved, and that it's fairly done.
Because that's part of the deal too, isn't it? Sometimes in order to bring a mine, you have to bring schools and hospitals to the community, or isn't that part of it?
It is. I mean, now we're getting more into that the sustainability side. It is that license to operate in these regions, which is a constant negotiating agreement. Constant communication with the communities. It's understanding what they're wanting, and you don't just come in and start digging a hole, start taking out the resources, and say to the community, "Okay, we're going to do school, hospital, movie theater, water slide, whatever you want." You need to sit down, communicate with those communities. You need to go in before you move in with the pick and shovels and start exploration teams, and really understand that you've connected with the community, not promise them anything, but just letting them know that you're there, that you're seeing what is could be viable for a project in the region, growing that relationship with the community, getting off on the right step, sitting down with that community, understanding what they're wanting. Do they want the school? Do they want the hospital? Or what are they wanting? Jobs? And just because you're hiring a couple people and you're saying, well, that's my social good to the project, may not be what they're wanting. So it's as the mine develops and you bring in your own hospital to serve your own employees, you may start seeing locals coming in, and you may have to start servicing medical care to the locals, which you weren't planning to. It's getting an understanding of the community that you're going to be working closely with, and
So you
how
get
that can change that community.
you get to understand the local community, but what about the government? Like in some of these countries, you thought you understood the government, but then if there's a change in power, there could be a big risk there. What happens? Do you just eat your
So
losses, or?
strategy, no, it's getting strategizing well, understanding the players, getting in touch with the opposition, being able to understand if there is a change of government, who you'll be working with, knowing that you're a partner with that country to be able to hopefully move forward. There are threats of nationalism. There are threats um, of projects being delayed or stopped, or because of the anti-development policies that government has. But you need to not just be backing one horse, let's just say.
Right.
I've seen that time and time again, where a mining company will have 5 different sites looking at developing in a country in West Africa or something, and they backed the wrong horse. The government changed, and they're no longer in mining. They're now in real estate or something else.
Yeah, because what was it? It was Peru just recently had an election, and wasn't there 16 candidates? So like you would do the due diligence on the main parties running for that?
Main parties, getting an understanding of their policies, their take. Are they going to deliver, or is it just a election promise that just to get votes? So in Ecuador, there's a new president, that's just Bazo, that was just elected about 10 days ago, and he's saying that he will follow a lot of the referendum results. So a lot of local communities have banned mining in certain watersheds around the country,
Okay.
or open pit. And he says that he'll follow through that we need to see if he follows through with that promise or not. He is pro mining, but is also wanting to work with the communities, and see how he moves forward with these.
I hope so. I'm Ecuadorian.
Yeah.
My mom's from Ecuador, and
Hmm.
the the biggest issue there is the poverty. So if they can bring jobs, perfect. But at the same time, if you're ruining their water supply, they'd choose water over jobs any day, I would think.
Yeah, there's quite a few jobs that are provided with the industry in Ecuador, about 3,000. But there's also a lot of beautiful natural resources.
Hmm.
There's a lot of opportunities, natural resources in that, from mining to plush rainforests. So it's and watersheds that need to be protected. So how do you move forward with these operations while protecting the environment in the region.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been great, Charles. I learned a lot. It's interesting stuff, and
It's a big subject, so there's
yeah,
lots to talk about.
yeah, you cover a lot there. Very interesting. Any other risks that I should know about or that investors should be aware of?
I would say the culture of the industry is an exciting one. It's one that they are often feel that they are confident enough that they can go into these regions, or they understand what's going on in those regions, and not getting that professional help and support needed. So again, going back to that WebMD, when you're sick, you don't become a foreign policy expert by going to the country's Wikipedia page, or turning on the CBC, or opening up the Financial Post or Globe or National Post or whatnot. So it takes a network, an understanding, analysis that can be done a lot quicker professionally rather than on your own. And it's that making sure that you do your due diligence on those and not just go in that cowboy culture of just, well, I'm going to go in, find that deposit. I've gone to neighboring countries, worked there for years, have an understanding of the language, the food, the politics, the beer. I'll be able to do this same thing next door. It could be a completely different scene. So it's getting that understanding, I think, is the big thing, and not just to look at the drill results and the financials. It's looking at the above ground risks, the politics, the culture, the security situation. What are the cartels doing? What are the insurgencies doing that may be developing in the area or the country next door? Are they going to be popping over the border to have a safe haven as they plan to attack their home country again? That sort of thing. So
yeah, well, even here in Canada, it was TMAC, right? TMAC, TMAC
yep,
with
TMAC.
China and coming
Yeah.
because
So
go ahead.
interesting opportunity with Chinese acquisition. Needed to be approved by the Canadian government, but didn't pass a test for national security reasons. Multiple ones. There were big concerns of, well, a state-owned company coming in. Yes, they'll be able to provide jobs much needed to these remote communities. But are they going to be showing up with a nuclear sub at the port? Probably not. Are we able to reciprocate and acquire? Is Canada able to reciprocate and acquire a mining company in China? Probably not. So that's one reason. Do you want a state-controlled company controlling the economy of a small community, of this foreign state owned company to control the economy of this small community? Probably not. So there were these concerns that you need to get a clear understanding of, again, before. And this is even in Canada, where we are quite open to opportunities.
Don't we have Russian foreign investment in Canada too? And I don't
You
know,
bet.
is it mining too?
Yes, yeah, we do. In the prairies, let me think. Is it a iron ore? No, what is it? They had an interesting hack about a year ago too. But yes, yeah.
But we said yes to them.
Yes, at that time, and they are here and operating.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, lots of opportunities, but also lots of risks, and just make sure you keep your eyes open and understand what's going on, and that the playing field can change quickly.
Well, thanks, Charles. We do a recurrent segment here called The Vault, so I'm looking forward to this one because it's going to be unique. It's usually just 3 mentorship-like questions that we do at the end. It's typically not available on YouTube because until I get the subscriber count up, I've been keeping it only to Apple Podcast and Spotify. So I think it's time for The Vault.
do what you did for lining this interview up when we met a couple months ago. It's everyone wants to connect, especially during these times of isolation with the pandemic, where people are not able to. But yeah, it's I would say those things.
Yeah, that's the same as setting yourself up for luck too. I just put myself out there and getting some phenomenal people. I even yesterday I locked in one with Terry Lynch, so we're going to be talking about
Oh, great.
algo trading and short selling in the
Mm,
space. So
short selling is a tough one.
so that'll be an interesting topic too. But yeah, people want to connect, and it's been awesome. People have been so gracious with their time and their advice. So it's been nice.
That's great. Well, thank you for setting up these learning experiences for us, your listeners. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast and look forward to hearing more.
Thanks, Charles. Well, you have a good day, and thank you for taking so much time out of your day to just sit down and chat with me.
Hey, thanks, Kyle. It's great to connect. Keep safe out there. See you
Yeah,
again
you
soon.
too. Okay.